Good afternoon. This week, my week 7 case study, I decided to do Jackson versus the Birmingham Board of Education. In this case study, I will discuss the facts of the case, arguments on both sides of the case, the court findings, and the implications for the athletic director. Jackson versus the Birmingham Board of Education is a case that centers around gender inequalities, Title IX. The main question that the Supreme Court was trying to answer was, does the Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 allow for lawsuits for retaliation for complaints about unlawful sex discrimination? This case was argued on November 30th, 2004, and the final decision was given by the Supreme Court on March 29th, 2005. The United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit heard the case, the original case. Roderick Jackson is the petitioner in this case. Roderick Jackson was a physical education teacher, and he was the head girls basketball coach in the Birmingham School District. He coached girls basketball for 8 years, and he was the physical education teacher for over 10 years. 6 years into Jackson's employment with the district, he transferred to another school within a district. It was then that Jackson discovered that the girls basketball program was not receiving equal funding and equal access to the athletic equipment and facilities. This is a clear violation of Title IX. Jackson, who was having a rough time during his job due to the lack of resources, started to complain to his supervisors about the unequal treatment the girls basketball team was receiving. According to Jackson, his supervisors did not listen. What happened after he started to complain was the Board of Education and his supervisors started to give him negative work evaluations. Ultimately, he was fired as the basketball coach a year after he began complaining about the unequal treatment. Jackson decided to sue the Birmingham Board of Education in federal court, claiming his firing violated Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. Title IX bans sex discrimination in federally funded schools. Jackson claimed Title IX gave him the right to sue, a private right of action, because he suffered for reporting sex discrimination against others, despite the fact that he did not suffer from the sex discrimination. It was the girls that did. So the school board argued that the plaintiff was an indirect victim of discrimination and thus not entitled to damages. They also argued that they were not liable for damages because Title IX was enacted pursuant to the spending clause of the United States Constitution, which requires that those receiving federal funds be given an adequate notice that they could be sued for certain conduct. The district court dismissed the complaint on the ground that Title IX's private cause of action does not include claims of retaliation, and the 11th Circuit agreed and they affirmed the decision. So at this point, Jackson did not have a case because of the court's ruling. However, the complaint reached the United States Supreme Court, in which they overturned the decision of the lower courts. The Supreme Court concluded that plaintiffs have a right to action for damages under Title IX. The court explained that discriminating against employees who complain about sex discrimination is in itself sex discrimination. Although the coach was not the original subject of the discrimination, the court held that retaliating against him made him a victim and was enacted pursuant to the spending clause of the United States Constitution, which requires that those receiving federal funds be given an adequate notice that they could be sued for certain conduct. The district court dismissed the complaint on the ground that Title IX's private cause of action does not include claims of retaliation, and the 11th Circuit agreed and they affirmed the decision. So at this point, Jackson did not have a case because of the court's ruling. However, the complaint reached the United States Supreme Court, in which they overturned the decision of the lower courts. The Supreme Court concluded that plaintiffs have a right to action for damages under Title IX. The court explained that discriminating against employees who complain about sex discrimination is in itself sex discrimination. Although the coach was not the original subject of the discrimination, the court held that retaliating against him made him a victim of discrimination. Title IX would have little meaning, and this was in the court's decision. The court thought if school systems were allowed to retaliate against people who report such discrimination. The Supreme Court's decision allowed for Jackson's case to be heard. The case did not make it back to court because the Board of Education decided to settle with Jackson, and they agreed to pay damages. They also hired him back as the head coach of another high school within the district. So the implications of this case to me, as an athletic director and a school district, you must take complaints about Title IX seriously. Anytime someone reports a violation of Title IX, you need to investigate it thoroughly to make sure that you are complying with the laws. In my mind, you should always be thinking about Title IX when you are making decisions as a athletic director and as a school district. This should be something that you think about before you reach a decision. Thank you, and that's my Week 7 case study.